Hey, good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Oh my. Oh, I can't hear you at all, Kevin. What just happened?
I turned my mic off during the
Oh.
intro. just
Oh.
just to freak you out. That was my birthday gift to you, was a
Oh, well,
freak
thank
out
you,
when you
Kevin.
first get going. Happy birthday.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
You should
Yeah.
be very proud of everything you've accomplished in the 25 years on this planet.
Wow. For 25 years of that, I am I am very proud of 25 of those years.
We won't multiply it out of what
Yeah.
it might really
Yeah.
be.
Or talk about the other ones. Yeah.
Nice.
How's everybody doing today? It's good to see everyone. We got the roar.
Yeah, I
Mr.
always know when
Walters.
things are going when the roar comes up from Mark, right? It's
Yeah.
in my ears, and then I could tell how much the delay is by when he's got it chalked up. So
Yeah.
Mark's coming in with a happy birthday.
Oh,
Comments
yes. Thank
on
you.
Miss Belinda coming in with happy
Oh,
birthday.
yes. Thank you. Oh, there's good old Paul is here. Indra is also. Thank you,
he
Indra.
he joins just to keep us honest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good seeing everyone. Another year around the sun. That's always exciting, to kind of make it around,
Yeah. What are your big plans for your birthday today? Anything?
Uh, my wife has made my favorite cake. Um, so that is quite exciting. I don't know what exactly the cake is. It's something with pineapple and coconut and like a German what the frosting that's on like a German chocolate cake goes on this cake, but it's not German chocolate cake. I don't. It's fantastic. It's out of this world. So
That's great.
yeah, yeah.
Well, enjoy.
Oh, thank you.
I think we could kind of see my little streamer off the TV for if hang on, let me
Oh
look at the
yes,
YouTube
yes.
part of it.
Here, we'll
Yeah, I
promote
could
it.
see it
There you
there
go.
too. Yep.
Yeah.
So I
And you
got
got
my
a little
little
birthday card
happy
from me too.
birthday, set up there. So
Oh, that's awesome,
uh,
Kevin. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
All right. What do we
Yeah.
want to roll into today? Any rules, any pre-announcements,
Yeah,
any
yeah, yeah. Let me hit on those. Okay, so everybody kind of knows the rules. One bite. Oh wait, no, that's a different thing. Prefix questions with Q. So get them queued up. Please don't spam. We don't have these issues. We're not big enough for that stuff yet, but someday that may occur. And if so, and when that happens, the moderators in the channel will be up and running, and we'll take this one right away. Fernando, currently we do not have shipping to Mexico on our cakes, but we will we will we'll look at that in the future. And yes, Paul has some stuff that came out of Power BI Next Step. There's going might turn into a contentious debate, and so we're going to be getting into that very very shortly. Yes. In fact, heck, Kevin, why don't we head over
what?
to your desktop and let's dive right into it. These are
Yeah,
just the. Why don't you? I'm not. I wasn't paying attention. I had a lot going on this morning.
yep.
What
Well,
are we looking at here?
I couldn't sleep overnight, so I've been up for a few hours already. And Power BI Next Step's been going on in Copenhagen,
Mm,
and a lot of times the PMs or others from Microsoft get permission to announce some things at some of the bigger conferences. So Mo was there. Mo, I don't remember his exact title, but he's pretty high up in the hierarchy for Power BI. Uh, so he announced a few things that I zoomed in on here because Marco put this out on Twitter. Uh, Power Query diagram view is coming to desktop.
oh, that's
The
good.
ability to edit calculation groups, which I think is huge because this is going to really kind of push calculation groups further.
Mm-hmm.
DAX query view. So being able to write a DAX query. And I think a couple people in our SML group have been working on DAX queries,
Mm,
understanding them more. Uh,
yep.
Visual calculations, hopefully coming soon. I know we were at a conference where they actually demoed this over a year ago. So I'm hoping to actually see that in the product soon. So
Yeah.
hopefully they got that worked out. I think that's going to be really, really nice. I think it's going to solve a couple problems that are out there.
Fingers
But
crossed. That'll help us with Greg Deckler's
yes,
me more. Like ending that would be nice.
I I wasn't going to bring that part up, but yes, exactly. But what a lot of people for the big news is folders in workspaces. Now,
Oh
before
yeah.
we get totally into this, let me bring up one other picture that somebody that Matthias was there as well, and he was able to capture this screenshot, and they must have given permission to share. So you see folder right here under new, you
Mm.
have the ability to produce to select folder. The other big thing is look down this line. Oops, if I could get my thing correctly. What do we see? We see better colored icons and
Oh, that's the one I like.
semantic model, a name change for data sets. I like that.
I like that a lot. And whoever had designed, like, had decided to use the database symbol for a data set, like, thank
Mhm.
you for throwing so many architects' lives into chaos for the last couple of years.
Yep.
That was awful. So glad that I don't necessarily like the new. I don't like the new icon, but it's leagues better than
Mhm.
the database symbol. So this is fantastic, and I think semantic model really speaks to people, right? Like that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's an industry standard term. We've been talking about the semantic layer for a long time, and now calling it the semantic model, I think that jives, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I like it. Tend to use the word model a lot more than data set, but then I got to use that word data set, like you said, because it's displayed and it just, pipeline's another one. It's so, overused and put
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Well,
It
and you
just
talk
drives me
about
crazy.
your data model. Are you talking about like the star
Hmm.
schema that's in your data warehouse? Are you talking about the data science data model? Are you talking about the data model like data model is way overused? This, I think, semantic model makes a ton of sense. I'm a big
Yep.
fan of that one, right? Um,
But let's go back to the big one because I'm dying to hear your opinion on folders.
I think folders is a super bad idea. I don't like them. I've been a big proponent of not having folders in place
Hmm.
because our biggest our in fact our only lever for managing content inside the Power BI workspace. And when I say managing content, I mean managing where my processing capabilities come from, managing and governing the resources is at the workspace level. The
Hmm.
second I start to introduce folders, that's when we will see users completely and totally abandon managing content by workspaces, i.e., distributing them to different servers. Um, and we'll just see, like, oh, well, we have 10,000, 20,000 reports exist inside this one workspace, and they're in 500 folders, and those folders go 20, 30 folders deep. And
Hmm.
it's going to become this nested chaos that we see inside of SharePoint. Like the thing that has just been the bane of every SharePoint existence is how many folders deep can you go? Like it's like the limbo. Like
Hmm.
there's no end to the depth that you can go with SharePoint folders, and we're going to see that now into Power BI, and I'm a little sad about that.
That's an interesting perspective. I do, you know, I can't disagree with you because I think there will be outliers of people that will do that.
Outliers.
Um,
I am saying that will become the
I know you're.
standard practice for 99% of the people that are out there. And we're going to the exceptions will be the people that use it right. And that's the problem I have with features like this is like these features like this are designed for people to be or are primed and ready for people to abuse them and not
Mm.
the other way around. And I think we should be better than that.
You, you know, I'd hate to say that I really think you're going to be right because I don't want it to be. I'm hoping that security, you know, this is what I was thinking is, well, wouldn't security, you know, proper security setup drive people to continue to use workspaces properly? But
No, because they're going
if
to be
what
like, well, now
if they're
how
the
can I apply these levels of security to the folder?
well, and that I doubt that's going to be there, but you
Of
know,
course, it's not going to be there.
and then that
But
so
then it's
now it'll
going to
just be a
become the.
security nightmare.
That's exactly right.
That's what your point is. So,
Yes. Yep. That is my point. Like, I have been a proponent. I love the filtering on the side. That I think
mhm,
helps a ton. I would contend what I would really prefer to see is the ability to tag resources inside of my workspace, and then be able to filter or group based upon tags.
yeah,
Then I get the same type of functionality of being able to rapidly find what I'm looking for, potentially even in a URL string that, I could like put that into it and get the contents I want. So I could even create bookmarks and all that other good stuff. But I would not be encouraging users to go into this crazy uh um uh oh yes.
yeah, yeah. It's,
Yeah.
it,
What and it becomes
so it sounds like you know
Whoa.
ideas.fabric.com is going to be getting something even before. Nice.
Yeah, like honestly, I think folders is just people want it. So many people want it. I hear it. I get it. I just
Yeah.
I'm seeing it coming down the pipe.
Yeah, well, I mean, time will tell, right? But yeah, I mean, it has been a big requested feature. A couple things that came through from the chat that I saw. Uh, Amin had a statement that put a Q in there, but I guess we'll let it go along, right? So this is all for the October drop. No, this is not for the October drop. What they are, what they have done here is they've started talking about what's on their roadmap for the next 6 months.
Mm.
Right. So there's no dates announced of when any of this is coming, but that they're finishing up their release wave planning, from my understanding. And so once they kind of finish that up, and they're in these conferences, and they're about to make the whole release wave public, they're able to start talking about it, and then at these conferences show some photos like this or some demos. But they're just people are allowed to take screenshots like this. And Fernando said he messaged me something. If you want to take my screen down, I'll look to see if I
Oh,
can find
sure.
what he sent to me. And then
I,
maybe we can
I
look
will
at the
also
other.
say, well, I don't know this for a fact, but I get a strong feeling that, and maybe this is completely wrong, when they go to these conferences and all of a sudden they find themselves like, hey, we want to present this, and these other features are already in that build and they can't separate it out. It's like, well, I guess we're going to announce these things too,
Yeah.
because, so I think the great thing about going to conferences is the ability to find out about these new features that are coming down the pipe so that you can then think about them and take the appropriate steps to move forward on on how you work and operate with them. So and to actually, now that I think about this, because that gives you time to like think about a feature before it comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not no folders, but maybe it's these people or this group of people are allowed to create and manage folders so that you can establish some governance and some practices around who can create and edit and manage folders. And it's not just everyone. And you find someone or some team going crazy on folders. You say, hey, you're not following our governance practices around folders. We're pulling you out of the ability to do that, right? So that you
Mhm.
you could create some like actual governance around these things, because the reality is, and the topic we're going to get in today is like, what is it going to be like to support a fabric solution in an enterprise or in a company?
Yeah.
Like, we need to have some standards and some control if it's going to be supportable. If you don't want to support it, right? Well, then, Katie, bar the door. You're on your way, right? Uh, but I think it's I think those types of rules and those types of policies make tons and tons of sense, because then it allows each organization to choose the levels of governance that they see fit. And maybe it's, they don't care and they're fine letting people do whatever they want inside of folders, or any given feature. And then they could just let everyone do that. Or they could be more restrictive and say, okay, this group gets to do it. Or if necessary, they could say, you know what? No one in our organization is going to do this because we have some specific legal challenges, or,
Mm.
internal political challenges that are out there. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
So if you want to bring my screen back up, I found the picture that Fernando sent.
okay.
Has a couple of other things on there, right? Backstage for desktop. I'm not sure I know what that is. Um, diagram views. We talked about that. Card visual seems like that's going to be getting updated. The button slicer. So we know they're working on improving all the visuals. That's been a huge effort, and I hear a lot of good things about that. They got a good working group for that, and it's not just MVPs; it's people from the community, other people. So I think they did a really good job pulling a lot of diverse people together to think about what the visual should look like. Calculation groups we talked about, model view. I don't know what the difference on model view and diagram view is. One's a diagram, one's the model. Um, but DAX query view with Copilot to help you write DAX queries, interesting. Visual calcs, and I saw Mark made a comment before, right? Visual calc seems to keep coming and going. I agree with you. This was something Chris and I were at a conference in Chicago over a year ago, and we first saw the first demo of visual calcs, and it still hasn't come out. So hopefully, I guess it's on the next 6 months to actually come out.
So I think that they are taking some. I think there's good reasons for the delay,
Mm-hmm.
in turning out a top rate product that actually does what like works and operates the way that users are going to want it to work, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you get a feature and you're like, this doesn't do what I want it to do. And the second someone says that, you're like, oh yeah, that is how this should work. I think they're doing lots of testing around visual calcs to make
Yep.
sure that they get that right. And I think that's something that,
That's a good thing, right? And
yeah,
not everything should be put out preview,
right,
right?
right, 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 right.
Because yeah, and from what we've seen, and they released a few things that are going to be applied to visual calcs, like those windowing queries, the offset, all of those type of things that are already in the DAX language, and they're seeing how it's being used. And but yeah, you're right. They got to be testing it, I won't say perfecting it, but getting it better so that it's a good experience when it comes out.
Yeah.
Because yes, we need to get those. We need these visual calcs. The problems it's going to solve is tremendous. So, and I think it's going to improve performance once people start using them right. So,
Yep. Yep.
And Belinda put a couple things out about Copilot for getting started, narratives for Copilot. So a lot more stuff with Copilot coming. So
Yeah, I'm excited about the narratives for Copilot. And pretty sure the feature that they're describing there is it Copilot will give you insights into the data in your model or the data that you're seeing, akin to how the like smart narratives work today, but like uber better, right? With uh Chat GPT-4 and LLM on the back end. So I think that's going to be really great.
nice. Well,
um,
thanks Fernando for sending this. A lot of
yeah.
interesting things coming up overnight from the conferences. So
Well, and I think so. Let's just keep on here with the whole folder thing. Fernando's asking, why do you think the ability to create folders to organize stuff may make users create more stuff? And I think Paul then chimes in like, hey, Power BI users, folders may seem silly and dangerous, but keep in mind, Folksmoon and Fabric from ADF can have a different perspective. I'm actually going to contend that I think that they're not looking at the content right. Even the people are moving from Fabric, and unless I'm missing something, inside of ADF, I get to choose on each pipeline what capacity my pipelines run with. And in fact, I can dynamically scale up and down my pipelines so that I've got all of my compute running in all sorts of different areas, and I'm managing my stuff differently. So I want to have folders because I'm managing those pipelines. We're talking about managing my code or managing where the location of my pipelines are for easy access and use. You do not have that same flexibility in Fabric of choosing, what capacities you're running against. And at least as far as I can tell, you don't have the dynamic or as dynamic ability to scale up, down, or out resources in Fabric in the same way that you do on the Pro Dev ADF side, at least today. So I think
yeah,
there's some differences there, and the reason why I still like workspaces for the delineation and the workspaces as the big folder breakouts is because then you say, okay, these resources are running on this compute node. This resources are running on this compute node. So that you can, you'd have a node for your bronze, a node for your silver, a node for your gold, and you could manage those accordingly. Uh, and am I
yeah.
wrong on this, Kevin? Or
No, I don't think you're wrong, but because like assuming that it's going to stay the way it is today, right? That
Mhm.
all we could do is assign that capacity at a workspace level.
Right.
Um, that's going to force people to still use the workspace concept.
Hmm.
Where I think your point is valid is the people that don't know and don't want to know, we'll just keep throwing everything into the same workspace and then all of a sudden wonder why their capacity. It's the same people that keep throwing everything onto the same VM, the same machine,
Yep.
and then wondering, why is this all of a sudden not running?
Well, yeah.
Uh,
Why is my SQL Server so slow? I mean, it
right.
worked great like a champ, but I just put the 487th database on, and now it's
Hmm.
just incredibly slow. Well,
Yep.
yeah, you have 487 databases running on your SQL Server. What are you thinking, right? Like
Yeah.
way too few people think through things, and so I prefer designs that push people or like I guess it's force people down proper build paths to help them avoid bad designs and design practices. It's not that
Yeah.
they're going to not do it, it's just that it's going to be a bit more tricky in getting that out, right?
Yeah. But used responsibly. Um, the folders could help you stay organized. Um, but I guess that's the message with anything, right? Is, if you're using it responsibly, using it the way it was designed. But so many people want to go around things and do stuff differently. But yeah, and I get Powell's point too, right? I mean, from with ADF, Synapse, things like that. You could, just think about having all of these notebooks together. That you could kind of bundle them together and everything. I still
Well,
like
but
the idea,
that's
and
exactly my point. is in ADF. It is a logical arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
In Fabric, it will be more than a logical arrangement. It'll be a logical arrangement, and it will be tied to a singular dedicated compute. And that's where I'm again challenged by it. So, all right. Well, I think we've.
Well, it kind of blends into what our actual topic is today, right?
Yes.
Because we're talking about what are going to be the challenges or the things that we need to do to think about managing Fabric and all of these artifacts and everything going forward. So we've already kind of talked about setting up different workspaces that have to go to different computes and to help you out there, right? That's the only way to kind of do it. So what are some of the other things that you're seeing, Chris, that are going to be challenges as we move forward to get ready for GA for Fabric and putting a true production solution on there? What are some of the key items that you think are there today and maybe even be missing today?
Well, and so I'm gonna go to my desktop, and I want to walk through how I think about this, and
Okay.
I want to hear your feedback and get the feedback from people as well. Okay, so
Sounds
turn
good.
this up. So as we think about our support, I think we have different audiences at each of the different levels that we're interacting and looking at. So when we have Power BI, we're talking about reports, right? And so who's my audience that we'd be looking to support here on reports? Well, that's going to be your consumers, your broad-based consumers inside your organization. And what are those consumers going to be looking for? They're going to be looking for, hey, I need to get access to the report. I need build permissions on a report. I need to find out who the author is on a report. All of these things are conditionally easy to access and understand, but I think there's some big challenges around on the report side that we can actually then extrapolate all the way back into the Power BI side, so we can start to plan out the effort around what it's going to mean to support this.
Okay.
And what do I mean when I say that? Understanding who the report author is and who owns that is only easy if you have access to you already have access to the report or it's shared in a proper way. If the report is shared right or you don't have access to the report, how do you find out where it is?
So the idea of, hey, I know a report is there, but I don't know who to ask to give me permission to see the report.
Right. Who's the owner of it, right?
Yeah.
So I have I was just shared a report that someone liked, and that individual was given build permissions on the data set that the report was created from. He said, "Hey, Chris, could you make these changes? We want to see these additions to it." I said, "Hey, yeah, no problem." I went in and I found out, okay, I could see the name of the report. I'm sorry, I could see, yeah, I had access to the name of the report. It allowed me to see the name of the data set. But then I had to go through a very long and convoluted process where I guarantee you no one would, if you're just a regular user, it's going to be exorbitantly difficult to figure out where to go to find out what that user is. So, oh my, I have lots of messages here. I guess teach me to turn a birthday, a year old. But it was amazing how deep I had to go into my data sets to find the owner and knowing where to go. And I was surprised that this owner wasn't actually populated on all of the data sets, and it turned out it was because of an inheritance issue and whatnot, because that owner had left and so that name had come off. And I think there's lots of challenges around that.
Yeah, and I noticed sometimes it gets changed to the workspace name.
Yes.
when
Yep.
from that view that you were just looking at there, right? Now,
Yep.
I think there is some other properties to say you could put down who a contact is or whatever, but again, that 90% of the people like prove your folder comment out some more don't
Right.
know how to use it correctly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That is exactly right. And um, so to that end, I guess hey Powell, and to some extent, I could say Powell, but I really think it's Tim Bindis. So if anyone knows Tim Bindis, he is working on some management content inside of Power BI, and frankly, he worked at Milwaukee Tool, and straight up, he had the most comprehensive, overarching governance solution that I've seen. So I really do trust him on this, but I also know that it takes a long time to get stuff built and up and running. So I think there's going to be, it might be a long time in coming, and that's where I think we need to be thinking about that and preparing to start to build our own data sets for
Hmm.
that. Okay. Um, and we're just gonna like come in and like actually now let's talk about the big rock. Okay, so we kind of talked about like okay, the report sharing, the report authoring. I think the concept extends down to the data set. The same challenges we have on the
Hmm.
data set side exist and the data flow side, right? But now we're starting to get into new territory around both the data engineering content. So to me, this is like the data analyst content. We can kind of draw from and understand what those challenges are going to be like. But when we get into data engineering, what kind of unique challenges, Kevin, do you think we're going to start to see um, when it comes to managing and supporting data engineering solutions inside of Fabric?
So just to be clear, when we're saying the data engineering part, we're thinking the actual lakehouse artifacts and notebooks. We're not getting into the data warehouse part of this yet, right?
No, we are. That is included.
Okay, so I was trying to make
Yep.
sure that
Yep.
whatever part we have encapsulated here. Okay, so I, I I I think what you're saying is going to continue to extend over to that. How do you know who to who you need to reach out to get access to that quote unquote database, right? Whether that database is a lake house and you need that SQL endpoint to be able to query the tables, the delta tables that get created in the lake house, or the set if it's all if it's all within one workspace and just put it into different folders. Now you have one SQL endpoint that you could see all those databases. How do
Mm-hmm.
you make sure that people are only seeing the databases they should see, um, getting that whole thing. And I don't know that we know enough yet about the one security that's coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be to me some of the huge challenges of again the same concept. Boy, Chris, we're going to just keep coming back to folders today. How many people just keep throwing same put just throw this table into this database, right? And they don't know that some people have read any table that they put in there and it's secured data, right?
Yep.
We had a situation like that, and then we ended up putting views on it for all the other people coming into it so we could add more objects that were considered secure, but not everybody see it. And we took DB Reader away from everybody and only
Mm.
gave them specific roles. So we need to be able to get to that. But again, how do who is the role of a DBA to help manage all of that, and who
Yep.
do you reach out to for it? So
Well, and so how about I'm starting to put these in now, but like also, what about source management and connections?
so
Um,
yeah, go ahead. You add on
well,
to, but I had that down too. Source control, right?
okay,
Um,
so hang on. There's
oh,
source
so
control,
you're talking source data source.
yeah, data sources and the connections to them. Do
Hmm.
you really want everyone uh, who's in a workspace to be able to access and connect to work? Oh my gosh, what's the HR? what's the HR
Yeah.
app that everyone uses now? Is it Workday? Workday. Like,
Workday's one of them. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, there's a couple of them, but
right. So if you're building out pipelines and your team and you're using the hub and spoke methodology for distributing who can build and manage content, does everyone use the same connectors? If so, like, do all of the connectors maintain, the right levels of security? How do you manage that? Right? Like,
mhm.
does everyone get the ability to access Dataverse? What about Azure SQL? Are does everyone have that access in that workspace? What controls do we get around that? And how do we support it when that goes wrong? Yeah, Workday. Yep.
Yeah. Well, or even, when you need to cycle your credentials to that source,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Even though you might have, what you consider a service account, a system account, whatever you want to call it, there there are times that you still cycle that, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
somebody had well, let's take worst case, right? You got a SQL database, you're using SQL Server authentication, so you're sharing login IDs and passwords, and somebody leaves, right?
Yep.
So you want to cycle that password for that login ID, right? How many
Mm-hmm.
places do you got to go and update that password, for managing all those connections? And then, kind of back to the point that you're talking about. Now, when you have connections all managed, um, you know, it, how do you share them correctly and everything else, right? So,
Yeah. Yep. I think there's lots of potential support issues there. And is a support desk the right place to be sending people to address these issues? And if not, does central IT have enough resources to help all of the different teams manage all of the potential issues that they might have inside of inside of their team's data engineering space? Is that appropriate for the central IT team to have to manage that? Is it reasonable to expect that from a help desk? What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
no and no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? But it's back to, right? If somebody cannot find who they're supposed to reach out to, who do they reach out to?
Mm-hmm.
Help desk, right?
Yep.
Because that's their thought of anything. Well, I'll just reach out to the help desk. And I know some places might have a generic help desk, right? And then some places will communicate, hey, we have this, we have an IT help desk and we have a generic help desk, right? It's just two examples.
Mm-hmm.
And then the user has to decide which one to go to. And eventually they end up going back to, well, let's just use one so that people aren't confused. And then you got to have procedures, or the help desk just has to have their network of people around the company to say, who do I reach out to, right? If it's Power BI, I go to Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And now Chris all of a sudden becomes a pseudo help desk person, and your day that you're supposed to be doing, design work or requirements gathering or refinement, whatever, now it's all interrupted by these things that you're being a pseudo help desk, which you're not really being a help desk. So it,
Right.
it, it is a huge challenge. And I think central IT does have to recognize that they need to carve out some people's time, in order to do that, but they want to have the right escalation methods so that it only gets to Chris when it actually has to.
Well, and I think that's where I actually, because like we're starting to get into like, okay, we talked about let me see about adding these in. So we started to get into the whole data engineering side, but that then we start to get into like, okay, now let's talk about data science stuff, right? Like these are things that like the data science team members are going to start to look into and have questions around. In fact, they'll probably have some like modeling stuff too. This is where I think the right response is we should be looking at our communities establishing a strong community of practice in each of these workspaces for people to run through and talk about who the issues are, and that it's
Mhm.
your subject matter experts in each of these areas who should be coordinating and leading those communities of practice. But it's the communities that need to be self-organizing and working together to take on these challenges. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Um, I'm digesting exactly what you were saying because what I'm hearing you say then is instead of one overall arching fabric community of practice, you may
Hmm.
break out your community practices kind of a sub one, right? That's a little bit more focused on what they're looking at, right? Whether it's data science, data engineering, or reporting,
Hmm.
um, which I think is going to be needed. But I think you're going to have to keep it open for people that want to grow from reporting back to data engineering, that they could at least come in and listen and learn from it.
Hmm.
Um, and then maybe some overarching, your COE should be the overarching type of thing. But I could definitely see that, um, would be good to break it out into different meetings for the different disciplines, because they're going to have different subjects to kind of talk about each time. Is that kind of where you were headed?
Yep, that
Yeah.
is exactly where I'm headed. And you're going to have people that you're going to give some ability. Uh, you're going to give some ability for these teams and for these people to really specialize
Hmm.
uh, on the content that's being created and what they're delivering, and that this all should be coming from that central COE, or I'm sorry, that community of practice. And I mean, the big reason for that to me is you need that ability to scale the people who are able to deliver and talk about a solution uh, to the size and uh, what are the working patterns of your company.
Yeah.
If your company only has data analysts, maybe it's still just your Power BI user group, or your Power BI COP.
Hmm.
But if you have data engineering that is scaled to like hundreds upon hundreds of data engineers, and you only have a handful of analysts, I mean, you should be right sizing your solution. And same
Yeah.
thing's true of your data science space, right? Like, all of these are going to be so unique to each customer that and each organization, that I think that's the heart of how we would want to solve these and provide direction inside of an organization so that it's flexible enough to meet the needs of that org.
Yeah. And as you've been drawing this and I've been looking at it, I keep thinking, are there horizontal slicers as well, or horizontal, you know, things that's going to cross all of them, right? And what I keep coming back to is the business units, the departments,
Hmm.
right? That's going to
Yep.
slice across all of those, right? For sure. I was trying to think if there was any other technical discipline that might go across it as well, but
Well, I think, and we are living very much in a matrix type or world where
hmm.
uh, we follow many masters, and uh, and Gartner has said the best data engineers you're going to find are going to come from within your business, and that is
Hmm.
100% true. The best data analysts you're going to find are going to come from within the business, come from the people that work with the data every single day, and like know it because they know what they're doing in their job. They're professionals, right?
Right.
The same thing is going to be true of your data scientist space. Um, but that does not preclude the need for experts in each of these areas. And I think that's where we need, like, and why I love Fabric so much is it allows for that pro code and that low code uh, team members to work together in the same place, doing the same thing, so using the same tools. And so when we have amazing people like Mark or Donald or Stina or Aman or the people who are like watching this show, choose to put on additional hats
Hmm.
because there's a need in their business, all they have to do is pick that hat up and put it on. And then they could start to work and operate. By having communities that are focused in on each of these areas, now we start to get to uh, we get to the point where we can easily go in and start to provide that expert guidance and those standards for how data engineering should work, how data analytics should work, how data science should work, right?
Yeah. Do you see? And I think we've talked about this before when we kind of had another conversation, but um, if this is going to get pushed out to the business, which is really what kind of made Power BI very successful,
Mm-hmm.
is the business going to be tempted to bring their own people in that are going to cross all of these disciplines? And then, what kind of issues is that going to have on the organization?
Oh, are they going to want people that follow all these disciplines? What
Like,
or
would they bring in, like now the business unit themselves, right? So
Mhm,
will things move for, like, let's pick data engineering, right? I
mhm,
think data engineering is very much in a central IT spot today,
okay,
right? And I
mhm,
think, data analyst is a lot are closer into the business.
mhm,
I think some of the business units try to get more people data science, right?
mhm.
Um, but do you think the business is going to be tempted in their own business units rather than central IT hiring in, people within these disciplines? They're going to, business units are going to bring them in. So you're going to have people spread out in different organizations rather than under an IT organization.
Yeah,
Will it break a lot of the central IT that we're talking about? Will it break it up?
I, I honestly, I think that is the direction that lots of companies are headed in. And Mark pointed that out. We're going to start to see more of these IT roles and practices exist inside of the business because
Hmm.
they're going to want and need these capabilities because they're intimately aware of it. But you talk to a manager like in sales who's going to have some passion and interest to start digging into data and uh, uh, doing more with it. And I think Dallin is hitting on it. He said yes, they're called analytics
Analytic, yeah.
engineers. um, Data engineering and business knowledge. No, I'm a little disappointed because I've been using that title to talk about like pro code model and
Hmm.
owners. But Dallin is right. Like that is the people that are doing stuff more in the data engineering and in the power or and in the analytics engineering space because they're working on building out these capabilities. But I think we're often going to see like those people want to be supplemented and assisted by those more professional or more dedicated data engineering resources, right? I think often, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think often we have the people that fit into the analytics engineering spaces is oh uh I think a lot of people who fit into the analytics engineering spaces and the people that do that stuff see kind of are very creative and can kind of envision the way things should be working and want to go through that evolution. And I know for myself, because that is very much the journey I was on for a long time, and I continue to be on. Uh, I'm not as good on the daily run and operations, right? And I think a lot of those people fall into that, right? Like, hey, you want to create something new? Yes, I'm on board. Hey, do you want to support 884 processes every day in which you have a 4% failure rate and you've got to spend, 3 to 4 hours every single day dealing with support issues? Oh, no, that sounds awful, right? And I think that's where uh, to the point of the conversation, we're going to start to see people and organizations have those hybrid positions and drive those IT type jobs out into the business, right?
But are you saying that the people that are going to be is going to be people growing that currently exist in the business units today, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
business people, right? And if they're
Yep.
the ones that are kind of growing into what was considered IT centralized roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they those the same people that are going to abuse the folder structure that you just talked about earlier,
Yes.
right? Because they haven't learned, right? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that are out there doing all that, 5,000 folders down in a SharePoint, right? And so then they're going to kind of do the same type of thing, to where the people in IT that have been around, being called at 2 a.m. And that's always a question I keep asking, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
when somebody says who's going to develop this or whatever, and the question back is, who do you want, or who's going to support it? Who do you want called at 2 a.m.?
Right.
Right. And the people in the business are going, well, not me. I need to be here during the day. I don't want to wake up at 2 a.m.
Right.
So, I think that's kind of back to where your folder thing is we got to be careful that given they got to have the right controls, the right guardrails around them so they don't do things that, could really be detrimental. Right.
Well, and I think again that's where um, that IT led, and honestly, I think it becomes a product
Mm.
team. Your data engineering as a product, analytics engineering or analytics as a product, data science as a product, start to come in and provide those guardrails, provide that structure, provide that organization, so that the teams that are working inside there can move within those guardrails and know that they're heading in the right general direction, and uh, can make sure that they're following best practices, can make sure that what they're doing is or will be supported, that type of thing. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, pretty much. I was dissecting Mark's comment at the same time, right? The trick is to upscale carefully, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily 5 minutes to wow.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
as you were kind of talking about that, I kept thinking back to, right? So is it really the business units hiring these people in when they don't really even know how to interview, right? The people that need some of the tech skills or whatever, or is it a organizational model that you have people in a quote central IT, but for some amount of time they're actually fully dotted line to, almost a solid line to that business unit. So they're learning the business, they're learning the data there, they're building that data product with the business unit, not the whatever direction, the central IT is giving them the high level direction of here, when you create a data product, here's the things you're going to put into it. You're going to add
Mm-hmm.
a lake house. You're going to have a data warehouse. It's this is our standard. And if you're going to come outside that standard, then you need to come back to our review board. But
Yep.
as long as you're within that standard, go make the business happy. Right.
Yeah. I think that we're talking that's exactly right. Is that honestly, I think it's a work, uh, like it's a task. And let's actually create a new slide here, because I think it is a matrix. And I think on one
Mm-hmm.
side we have the tasks, right? It's so slash what needs to get done, and then we have on the other side it's how it's delivered,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we're going to be managing like this dualistic roles where the tasks are going to come from the business, right? And how it's delivered is going to come from uh, IT slash experts. Actually, in fact, I'm removing IT from that And I actually,
Well, okay. The,
uh,
the the challenge that I have there is then somebody in a business unit hires somebody that they claim is a technical expert, and so now they determine how it's delivered, right? But they
yep.
didn't know that the person really wasn't a technical expert.
Uh, say that again.
Okay. Um, so um, my challenge there is if the business units, the departments are hiring in people, and they bring somebody in and they go, oh well, so and so Joe is a technical expert, but they didn't really know how to interview Joe, and Joe sold them a bill of goods that he's a technical expert, right? So
Hmm.
that's why I still think the technical experts. I think you had it right when that was kind of bundled in with IT. Is IT that knows how to hire people correctly, interview people correctly, and I'm not even sure everybody in IT knows how to do that. As I'm talking this through, right? But defining who really is something, defining the technical expert has to be vetted out somehow.
Yeah, and I think that's where we'll have like shared responsibilities and capabilities, and that's where I think it's the technical experts have to be involved in the interview process when we're hired. Interview process and employee review process, right?
Hmm.
Like my business partner is not going to know how to evaluate properly the
But
skills and capabilities of that resource that is now reporting to them.
but
Um,
have you seen that anywhere? Because I haven't
mhm. Yeah.
really.
Yep.
So that's good because you know what I've seen is that the business just gets frustrated with central IT with all the processes and delays that they put into it, and they just go, "Well, I opened up a rec and I'm able to hire in somebody that knows quote Power BI." So
Well, and that's where like that whole I honestly well, I've always called it a come to Jesus moment of like, hey, we've got to admit what is the purpose of business, right? And
hmm
I got really bad news for probably everyone on this call. The purpose of no business is doing IT. I mean,
hmm
Microsoft, even their business of delivering technical products, you know, they're still in the business of selling those technical products, right?
yeah,
It's not the act of doing IT that they're paid for. It's creating products that can be used by people that they want and on a cadence that they need it. Um, and it's not the act of IT. And so that's a like a come to Jesus moment that every business needs to have with their IT teams. And I
yeah,
think we're honestly just waking up to that, right?
yeah,
And um, I think lots of businesses have had that conversation and are starting to get out there uh, and and recognizing that. I've seen that at a number of different places, and honestly, I think it works really great because then you can have someone that's dedicated, and every day they get you know they meet with the business and they spend 90+ % of their time working in the business, taking direction
hmm
from the business, doing what's being asked of the business, right? The business populates
yep,
their entire Jira board, but when it comes to like how do they execute on it, that's where they get the direction from the IT side, right? That or
yep,
I'm sorry, the technical experts. And the
yep.
reason I'll differentiate from saying it's just IT is because as your organization matures, those individuals that will be in the business unit will
Will
become
become
technical experts.
so it takes a shift from the IT group as well, a
Right.
big shift, which I think is what I really haven't seen because, yeah, and I know we're bumping up against it
Oh yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
You're
So,
right.
you know, whatever your thought was here, let's see if we can wrap it up.
Well, I guess that was just that
I didn't know if you
one.
were going to try to draw more here, but
I
yeah,
was yeah,
it's
but
gonna
we're
make
running
it.
out of time. Well, like that's fine.
You got a birthday cake to be
Yeah,
dreaming
I've
about
got a
and
lot,
stuff.
and yes, so I got to get in on that. But thank you guys all so much for joining us today. Really, it's always a pleasure seeing everyone. on the
Love
stream.
our Friday mornings. Next week I'll be coming from an undisclosed location again.
Oh,
So it'll be
yes.
I'll have a totally, hopefully I'll have enough everything that I can actually do this. So
Well,
we'll see
we will
how it
see.
goes.
We'll both be heading towards Minnesota, or Kevin
Mhm.
will be in Minnesota. I will be leaving immediately after the live stream. I'll be loading up the car and heading over to Minnesota. So we will see you guys over there. If you're near Minnesota, head on over. Can't wait to see you guys. So,
And
well, thank you, Donald.
there you go.
Oh, super chat.
All right. Yes.
Oh, well, thank
All
you
right,
guys so
everybody.
much. Yes.
Have a good week. Peace.
Peace.
If I can find my
I'm not
camera.
ready with my button. Hold on. All right.
Bye.
Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.